The call came in at 6:13 p.m. 2 boys missing. No cell signal, no footprints, just silence. And the woods. By 7 o'clock, the sun had dropped below the treetops, and the search was already turning frantic. The younger boy had asthma. The older one was scared of the dark. Their father, covered in scratches and shaking like a leaf, kept pointing toward the tree line, repeating, "They were just right there." Noah and Eli Morgan, ages 9 and 7, had vanished during a weekend camping trip just 20 miles outside of Branson, Missouri. No warning. No scream. Just gone. That's when they called in K9 Rocky. He wasn't active duty anymore. Not since an injury to his right paw forced him into early retirement. But Kate Mullins, his former handler and now sheriff's deputy, didn't hesitate when the request came through. Rocky might have been slower now, but his nose? Still gold. As Kate pulled up to the Morgan campsite in her dusty Tahoe, Rocky was already pacing in the back, whining low and sharp. He knew. Somehow, he knew. The campsite looked normal at first glance. A cheap pop-up tent, a circle of burned firewood, a bag of marshmallows half spilled on the ground. But then Kate saw the overturned folding chair and the 2 child-sized jackets still hanging from the cooler handle. "Nothing?" she asked the deputy at the scene. "Not a sound. No signs of struggle. We've had people shouting in every direction for 2 hours now." Kate crouched near the cooler and picked up one of the jackets. Tiny, fleece-lined, forest green with a tear in the left sleeve. "This one's Eli's?" The father nodded weakly. "I told him not to wander too far." Kate stood and unclipped Rocky's lead. "Find the boys, Rock. Let's go." The shepherd didn't even pause. Nose down, ears alert, he started toward the tree line and then veered right toward the thickest patch of woods. Kate followed without hesitation. About 15 minutes into the search, Rocky began to behave oddly. Not just tracking, but stopping to look behind him, circling, sniffing the wind, then bolting forward again. Almost like something was familiar. Too familiar. Kate narrowed her eyes. Rocky didn't just pick up the boy's scent. He was recognizing something else. They were a good half-mile into the trees when Rocky suddenly froze. He stood still, nose lifted, tail rigid, body vibrating with tension. Then, without a sound, he bolted left, off-trail, downhill, toward what looked like an overgrown ravine. Kate sprinted after him, pushing branches out of her way as the undergrowth thickened. The air grew cooler here, darker, even though it was still early evening. And that's when she saw it. A camper, hidden beneath years of vines and brush. Rusted, tilted, half sunken into the soft earth like it was being swallowed whole. The kind of vehicle people abandon and forget about. Or try to. Kate's heart pounded. Why hadn't this been found earlier? Why wasn't it marked on any ranger maps? "Rocky!" she called out. He was already at this camper door, scratching, barking, his body low and tense. She rushed over, yanked the handle. It wouldn't budge. The door had been welded or locked tight from the outside. That's when she heard it. A knock from inside. "Hello!" Kate shouted. "Noah? Eli?" Another knock, softer this time, then a small voice. "Help us." Kate backed up, slammed into the door with her shoulder. Once, twice. Finally, it gave way. The metal creaked open and the smell hit her instantly. Sweat, rust, damp carpet. Inside, in the gloom, were 2 boys, dirty, pale, wrapped in what looked like old blankets, shaking, but alive. Rocky rushed to them, licking their faces as they clung to his fur. Olivia, the older boy, started crying. "He told us to stay here. He said someone would come." Kate frowned. "Who did?" The boys looked at each other, hesitant. "We didn't see him. Just his boots," Noah whispered. "He said to wait, and to be quiet." While you're here, if stories like this move you, if you believe in the loyalty of dogs and the bravery of those who serve silently, take a moment to subscribe to Heroes for Animals. You'll get real, powerful stories of animals like Rocky, heroes who don't wear badges but still save lives. Kate radioed for medical backup immediately. The boys were dehydrated but otherwise unharmed. Their father arrived moments later, sobbing and dropping to his knees when he saw them. Everyone on scene treated it like a miracle, and it was. Rocky had done the impossible. But Kate couldn't shake a single burning question as she stood outside the camper, staring at the rusted body and cracked license plate. Where had this camper come from? Because something about it felt off. Wrong, even. It didn't look like it had just been parked there recently. It looked like it had been there for years. That night, while the boys were transported to the hospital and the team began taping off the area for evidence, Kate stayed behind with Rocky, staring at the license plate through a flashlight beam. She scribbled the numbers into her notepad and made a mental note to run it when she got back. What she didn't expect was the result, because when she entered the camper's VIN number into the system 2 hours later, it came back flagged. The alert read, "Reported destroyed, total loss, fire, March 2018. Kate froze. 5 years ago. This camper wasn't supposed to exist. Kate couldn't stop staring at the VIN report. Destroyed. Total loss. Fire. March 2018. It didn't make sense. She had just opened that same camper door hours earlier. It was real, rusted, buried under vines, and reeking of mold, but very much there, very much intact, and it had held 2 missing boys inside. She refreshed the database again. Same result. The camper had burned in a fire near Table Rock Lake 5 years ago. Insurance claim filed, investigation closed, no foul play suspected. The listed owner, Daryl Knox. That name tickled something in the back of Kate's mind, but she couldn't place it. Not yet. Rocky stirred at her feet, letting out a quiet huff as he stretched and lay back down, still on high alert despite the calm of her living room. Kate reached down, ruffling the fur behind his ears. What did we just step into, boy? By morning, the news had already spread. 2 boys found safe. K9 saves the day. Local hero dog Rocky hailed in the press. But Kate wasn't celebrating, not yet. There were holes in this story big enough to drive a truck through. How did a camper that supposedly burned to the ground end up hidden deep in the forest, with 2 live children inside? And who was the man the boys described, the one who told them to stay quiet? They hadn't seen his face, just his boots, his voice. But they said he seemed calm, like he knew someone would eventually come, like he was waiting for us to find them, Kate muttered aloud. That afternoon, Kate drove to the county archives and pulled the original fire report. The photos were chilling. The 2018 scene showed a camper engulfed in flames, melted siding, a collapsed roof, scorched trees around it. No bodies were recovered. The fire marshal noted that the cause was likely an unattended propane stove. The listed owner, Daryl Knox, was marked unreachable. Kate flipped through the report again, slower this time. One detail jumped out. The fire had occurred less than a mile from the spot where Rocky had found the camper, which meant either the camper had somehow survived that fire, or it had never burned at all. Kate returned to the scene with a new team. They combed the area with fresh eyes, cadaver dogs, forensic specialists, drone coverage. The camper had already been towed to the state lab, but the ground still held secrets. Near the clearing, buried beneath a thin layer of pine needles and dirt, the team found something unusual. A pile of ash and blackened metal fragments. And not far from it, another VIN plate warped by heat. It matched the report from 2018. Kate stood in the center of the clearing, eyes narrowed. There were 2 campers, one destroyed, one hidden. Someone had switched them. Burned one for the insurance, hid the other for what? Rocky circled the area, nose working, tail rigid. He barked once, sharp and sure. Then he sprinted into the brush. Kate followed. He led her to a tree about 300 feet away. At its base was something small and metallic, an old padlock covered in rust and dirt. Nearby, half buried beneath a fallen branch, was a plastic storage bin. Inside it, a child's shoe, a tattered blanket, and a spiral notebook with crayon scribbles. Not Noah's, not Eli's. "Dear God," Kate whispered. Back at the station, she put in a request for missing children cases from the past 10 years within a 100-mile radius. The results came back heavier than she'd expected. Runaways, custody battles, cold cases. One case jumped off the screen. Jenny Cartwright, age 6. Vanished in 2019 from a rest stop with her mother. Never seen again. Her shoe, a tiny white sneaker with a pink flower, matched the one in the bin. Kate leaned back in her chair, her stomach turning. This guy's been doing this a long time. And he wasn't just kidnapping. He was collecting, quietly, carefully, always just out of reach. Later that evening, Kate paid a visit to the boys' parents. The Morgan family lived in a modest ranch-style home on the edge of town. The boys were safe now, playing video games in the den, though they flinched whenever the game's background music got too loud. Their father, Aaron, looked 10 years older than he had 2 days ago. Their mother, Julia, hadn't slept. Kate sat at the kitchen table with them, hands folded. "There's something I need to ask," she said gently. "Did you recognize anything about the camper? Had you seen it before?" Aaron shook his head. "No, maybe when I was younger. That model looks like the kind my uncle had, but no, nothing specific." "What about the man?" Kate asked. Julia tightened her grip on her coffee mug. "They said he didn't show his face, just told them to stay inside. That help was coming." Kate nodded. "He wasn't lying, but he wasn't trying to rescue them either. He left them there on purpose. That camper was placed, not stumbled upon." "What are you saying?" Aaron asked. Kate hesitated. "I'm saying this wasn't random. Someone staged that camper as a trap. Maybe not for them, but for someone. And now that we've found it, that person knows we're getting close." That night, Rocky wouldn't settle. He kept pacing near the back door, growling low under his breath. Kate went outside to check, flashlight in hand, but found nothing. Just wind and crickets. But Rocky was right. They were being watched. A trail camera set up by the forensics team near the camper captured something chilling earlier that day. A man in a hoodie standing at the edge of the trees, just watching, not moving. The timestamp? 30 minutes after the boys were rescued. Kate stared at the still frame on her laptop, zooming in on the man's blurry outline. No face, just shadow. But those boots? Exactly like the ones the boys described. The next morning, Kate sat on the floor next to Rocky, holding the spiral notebook found in the forest. She flipped through the crayon drawings, trees, stars, a camper, a dog. Then she stopped. One page showed 3 stick figures inside a box. Outside the box, a large black dog and a figure drawn in all red. Above it, in shaky writing, he said, "Stay quiet, the dog would come." Kate looked down at Rocky, who was staring right back at her. "He knew," she whispered. "He knew we'd come. But how? And more importantly, why now?" By the time the sun rose the next morning, Deputy Kate Mullins had been awake for nearly 36 hours. Coffee barely touched the exhaustion clinging to her bones. But she couldn't stop. Not now. The footage from the trail camera wouldn't leave her mind. The silent figure standing just beyond the tree line, watching the search crew walk right past. No motion, no panic, just waiting. He hadn't run. He hadn't tried to reclaim the boys. He had just watched. That unsettled Kate more than anything else. In her office, the image from the trail cam sat frozen on her monitor. Blurry but chilling. A man in dark clothing, hoodie up, hands tucked into his pockets, standing with one booted foot propped on a tree root. Even zoomed in, his face was unrecoverable. No visible tattoo, no scars, no logo on the sweatshirt. But it was the boots that caught her eye again, military style, tan leather, high-laced. Exactly what the boys described. Eli had even drawn them in crayon during therapy the day before. Kate picked up the notebook with the child's drawing again. The page with 3 figures trapped in a box. The large dog outside. The red figure. Red. She turned back to the screen and looked harder. It was nearly invisible at first, but once she adjusted the brightness, she saw it. Just a hint of deep red near the edge of the man's jacket sleeve. Almost like paint? A patch? No department issued that uniform. Not locally, not even state corrections. Something about it made her skin crawl. At 9:00 a.m. sharp, she drove to the address listed in the 2018 fire report. Darrell Knox. No current phone number, no criminal history, no living relatives on file. His last known address? A rundown farmhouse on the outskirts of Taney County. When she pulled up the gravel driveway, Rocky in the passenger seat started to growl. A deep, guttural sound she hadn't heard from him since his last drug bust 3 years ago. That was all she needed to know. Something here was wrong. The farmhouse was a picture of abandonment. Shingles missing, porch sagging, windows boarded. But the front door stood slightly ajar. Kate drew her weapon, clipped Rocky's lead to her belt, and stepped quietly onto the porch. "Sheriff's Department," she called out. "If anyone's inside, I need you to show your hands." No answer. Rocky's ears went up and he moved low, body tense. Kate nudged the door open with her boot. The inside smelled like dust and mildew, but it wasn't empty, not by a long shot. There was a mattress on the floor, canned food stacked against a wall, a kerosene lantern on the counter, a pile of crumpled clothes, some adult-sized, some child-sized, and taped to the wall. Drawings. Hundreds of them. Children's drawings. All scrawled in crayons, some on notebook paper, others on the backs of flyers, napkins, even receipts. Some were innocent, flowers, stick figures, dogs. Others were not. One showed a man standing in front of a camper, holding a sign that read, "He waits." Another showed two children hiding under a bed while a dark shape stood outside the room. Kate's stomach twisted. She took photos of everything. Then Rocky let out a sharp bark. He was staring at the back wall, where a trapdoor sat beneath an old rug. Kate pulled it open. A set of wooden stairs led into darkness. The basement was worse. Not in the usual horror movie way. No chains, no stains, no screaming faces. Just silence. And shelves. Shelves filled with old VHS tapes, each one labeled with a name and a date. Kate scanned them. J. Cartwright, 10:04:19. M. Serrano, 06:22:16. E. Morgan, 03:11:23. Her blood ran cold. Eli's name, just 3 days ago. She grabbed the tape and ran upstairs. No VCR on site, but she'd find one back at the station. Right now, she needed to get out of that house. Whatever this place had been, it wasn't abandoned by choice. It had been left behind, quickly and probably recently. At the station, she dusted off the ancient VCR from the evidence room and hooked it up to an old TV. She popped in the tape labeled E. Morgan and hit play. Static. Then a shaky shot of the inside of the camper. Eli and Noah sitting on the floor, looking confused. They weren't crying, they weren't hurt. But someone, off camera, was speaking to them. "We're going to stay very still, okay? Just until your dog finds you. He's a good dog. He'll come." The voice was soft, male, calm, completely at odds with the situation. Kate's heart pounded. She rewound the tape and played it again. This time she closed her eyes and just listened. The voice. It was low and even. No accent, no threat, no anger, just familiar. Rocky let out a low whine from the corner of the room. Kate opened her eyes. Could it be someone they knew? She turned to the county's database and ran the voice through their forensic linguistics partner. It would take time for a result, but she had a hunch it wasn't going to be a stranger. Next, she went back to the camper photos. The original one from the fire in 2018. She zoomed in on the VIN, then the damage. And then she noticed something strange. The fire had been photographed after the roof collapsed, but there was no soot trail, no flashover pattern, no melt on the propane valve. Kate's eyes widened. The fire had been staged. Back at her desk, the search results on Daryl Knox came back with a ping. A minor court filing from 2015. Not criminal, but family court. Custody dispute. Knox had been trying to gain custody of a daughter. She was 5 at the time. The case had been denied. The mother moved states. No forwarding info. The daughter's name? Jenny Cartwright. Kate's jaw clenched. She remembered the matching sneaker in the plastic bin. Jenny had gone missing just 2 years later. This wasn't random. Knox had lost something, and he'd been trying to recreate it ever since. As dusk settled in, Kate drove back out to the woods where the camper had been. The crime scene tape fluttered in the wind, the clearing still eerily quiet. She stood where the camper once sat and looked around. Then she heard it. A snap of twigs, not from the trees, from behind her. She spun. No one. But Rocky was growling again, this time staring straight into the trees. Kate raised her flashlight, scanned the brush, and saw them. Boot prints, fresh, leading away from the clearing. She stepped forward and stopped cold. Etched into the dirt beside the prints, drawn with a stick, were 3 letters, RK9. Rocky sniffed the letters, then looked up at her. Whoever they were dealing with wasn't just watching them. They knew exactly who they were dealing with. The initials scratched into the dirt, RK9, haunted Kate all the way back to the station. She couldn't shake it. Whoever had left those boot prints knew Rocky's name. Not just the K9 designation, Rocky. That meant whoever they were, they had been watching, listening, tracking the rescue. Maybe even long before the search began. That kind of familiarity wasn't random, and it wasn't accidental. Kate knew predators. She'd spent nearly a decade dealing with them. The cruel ones made quick decisions. But the calculating ones? They waited. They studied. They didn't just stalk their victims, they studied their rescuers, too. That night, she didn't go home. Instead, she pulled an all-nighter in the department archives, flipping through any past case file that even whispered Daryl Knox's name. Buried in an old box labeled Incident Reports, 2013 to 2018, she found something. A dispatch log from a noise complaint on private land out in South Cedar Hollow, a long-forgotten area about an hour west. Caller reported children's voices and howling from what had been registered as a burned-out mobile home lot. No official follow-up had been recorded. The call had been dismissed as a prank, likely due to Halloween weekend. The date? October 29, 2018, 7 months after Knox's camper burned. Kate's skin prickled. The next morning, with a thermos of gas station coffee and Rocky loaded up in the passenger seat, Kate made her way down the winding back roads into South Cedar Hollow. She didn't alert backup. This wasn't an official visit. Not yet. The land was still registered to a now-defunct property management group. Half the homes out here had been swallowed by vines and dust. The area had that feel to it. The kind of place where no one would scream because no one would hear. As she rolled down the gravel path toward the burned-out mobile lot, Rocky suddenly stood, tail stiff, nose twitching. Kate slowed to a crawl. The mobile home had long since collapsed, nothing left but blackened beams and a few warped support posts. But there was a storage shed half open, its door swaying gently in the breeze. Kate reached for her holster and stepped out slowly. "Rocky," she said softly, "stay close." He obeyed, low to the ground, moving beside her like he had during their best canine days. She approached the shed, heart pounding. Inside, it was mostly empty. Dusty garden tools, an overturned wheelbarrow, a pile of newspapers. But beneath the newspapers was a plastic crate. And inside the crate, blankets, bottled water, a toy. A small handmade plush fox, stitched with mismatched buttons for eyes. It looked like it belonged to a toddler. Kate felt a lump rise in her throat. This wasn't just a forgotten campsite. Someone had been preparing this place. Preparing it for a child. Back at the station, she met with the FBI liaison, Agent Rhonda Keene, who had driven in from Springfield once the Child Recovery Unit got wind of the camper twist. "Knox's name popped up on our radar years ago," Rhonda said, scanning Kate's findings. "No criminal charges, but too many odd flags. Foster system complaints, family court disputes, then the fake fire. And now 2 boys found in his camper?" Rhonda leaned back in her chair. "He fits the profile of a collector, not the kind who hurts, at least not directly. He takes, then waits. Sometimes he lets them go. Sometimes he abandons them when the heat gets close. And sometimes," Kate said, "he never lets go." Rhonda tapped her pen. The VHS tapes, the drawings, the voice on the Morgan boys' recording. "We ran it through our federal voice print database." Kate stiffened. "And? It's not a total match," Rhonda said, "but we have a partial. Years ago, Knox submitted a voice sample as part of a public broadcast. A local radio interview, 2015, talking about a community cleanup initiative he started. Kate remembered the tone now. Smooth, almost therapeutic. A man who didn't yell, who didn't threaten. He coached. "Did you notice what the voice said on the tape?" Rhonda asked. "He didn't say stay alive or stay hidden. He said, 'The dog will come.'" Kate nodded slowly. "He wasn't just talking to the boys." "He was talking to you," Rhonda said. Later that night, exhausted but restless, Kate walked Rocky behind the station under the floodlights. The building backed into the edge of a wooded hill, and on quiet nights it felt peaceful. But not tonight. Rocky stopped, whined, then growled. Kate turned her flashlight toward the tree line. Nothing, but she saw it. Pinned to a low-hanging branch, a folded note. Kate approached carefully, heart thudding. The paper was yellowed, stained at the corner, held in place by a safety pin. She opened it. He was right. You always were the good one, but this story isn't finished. Not until I say goodbye. DK. Kate's chest tightened. The handwriting was blocky, uneven, same as the scribbled names on the VHS tapes. Rocky barked suddenly, spinning toward the slope behind them. Kate raised her flashlight again, but there was no movement. Whoever had left that note had been here, watching again. Close enough to pin a message within spitting distance of a sheriff's department. That wasn't just bold, that was personal. The next day, the Cartwright case files arrived from Oklahoma. Jenny Cartwright, the little girl who'd vanished from a rest stop with her mother, had never been found. But in one interview with the mother, she'd said something strange that had stuck with the original investigator. "She told me about a man with a voice like a storybook," the mother had said. She said he told her things in the dream, about a dog and a camper and how if she ever got lost, she should follow the scent of crayons. Kate blinked. It sounded like nonsense, unless you were a child, unless you were being trained. That evening, Kate returned to the shed in Cedar Hollow. This time, she wasn't alone. Rhonda and 2 agents swept the property while Kate and Rocky circled the perimeter. Rocky stopped at a patch of earth behind the shed. Sat. Whined. Kate knelt and began to dig with gloved hands. Just a few inches down, they hit something soft. A backpack. Inside, a bottle of children's vitamins, a flashlight, a roll of duct tape, and a cassette recorder. She clicked it on. A voice crackled to life. "We don't run. We stay quiet. We follow the rules. The dog will come. He always does." The voice was Knox. No anger, no urgency, just certainty. And a terrifying calm. That night, Kate sat on her porch, Rocky's head resting on her knee. "You know what this means, don't you?" she said softly. He wagged his tail just once. "He's not just choosing them. He's choosing us, too. He's been planning this for years, leaving trails, dropping breadcrumbs, playing some long, messed-up game." She looked up at the dark tree line surrounding her home. He's not done. And she knew, neither was she. 3 days after the shed discovery in Cedar Hollow, the town of Branson, Missouri, was already trying to move on. The headlines had shifted. The news crews were gone. The buzz around the heroic K-9 rescue had faded into whispers. But Kate Mullins knew better. The man behind all of this, Daryl Knox, the voice behind the tapes, the figure behind the tree line, hadn't vanished. He was circling, watching, waiting, and now he was choosing his next move. Inside her office, Kate stared at the caseboard plastered with maps, newspaper clippings, and photographs of every missing child in the region over the last 15 years. She was trying to build a pattern, a trail. She had already matched the toy found in Cedar Hollow to a girl named Lacey Jordan, who disappeared in 2016 on a family trip through Arkansas. Every piece of evidence pointed to one chilling conclusion. Knox wasn't just hiding children. He was testing their rescuers. He picked children who had strong search efforts, high-profile cases, families that wouldn't stop looking. He wanted them to be found, but only when it suited his purpose. "It's not just about the kids," Kate muttered, flipping through a folder. "It's about us, about the ones who come after them." Across the room, Rocky shifted, ears flicking at the sound of Kate's voice. He wasn't resting much these days. Ever since the note appeared behind the station, he'd been alert, always watching the door, always waiting. That afternoon, FBI agent Rhonda Keene returned with a surprising update. "We got something. Finally. Remember the voice print?" Kate nodded. It hit on a private counseling session recorded by Child Services in 2012. Court-ordered evaluation. The case was sealed, but the audio leaked when we flagged the vocal patterns. She handed Kate a file. Inside, a grainy photo of a man in his 30s with calm eyes and a strange half-smile. The name? Daryl Knox, alias Daryl Kendrick. He had applied to be a state-certified foster parent 3 times between 2009 and 2011. All 3 were denied, but that didn't stop him from acting like one. The state had flagged him for excessive attachment to children during supervised visits, and for bringing unauthorized items, gifts, stuffed animals, handwritten stories with his voice recorded, into visitation rooms. They labeled him nonviolent but emotionally manipulative. Kate clenched her jaw. He was practicing. That evening, Kate went back through the drawings they'd collected from the camper and the shed. Most were simple, stick figures, rainbows, trees. But one stood out. It wasn't done in crayon like the others. It was pencil, more mature, carefully shaded. It showed a young girl standing at the edge of a forest. Behind her, in the distance, was a small house with smoke rising from the chimney. She was smiling, but her eyes were hollow. In the bottom right corner, written in small letters, "I was found, but I'm still here." The girl's name was unknown, but Kate's gut told her she hadn't been drawn from memory. She was still alive, somewhere. That night, Kate and Rocky returned to the edge of the woods near the original camper site. She stood in the clearing for a long time, flashlight off, letting her eyes adjust to the dark. "I know you're watching," she said softly. "You always do." No response, no movement. But Rocky sat, staring toward the trees. Then Kate noticed something. Tacked to the base of a tree, nearly invisible against the bark, was a postcard. She approached it carefully. It was aged and water-stained. On the front, an image of an old amusement park called Valley Pines Family Fun Center, a place that had closed down back in 2017 after a financial scandal. On the back, written in block letters, "You're not done, I'm still waiting. Bring the dog." There was no signature, just a set of GPS coordinates. By dawn, Kate had already mapped the coordinates. They pointed to a remote area just outside Taneyville, nestled deep in the woods. There were no buildings on record, no cell towers, no patrols, just trees, rock, and an old water treatment trail long since abandoned. Rhonda wanted to bring a SWAT team. Kate refused. "This isn't about overwhelming him. He doesn't run when we show up in force. He vanishes." Rhonda hesitated. "You sure about going in alone?" Kate glanced at Rocky. "I'm not alone." The drive to Taneyville was slow, winding, and mostly silent. Kate kept her windows cracked and her hand on Rocky's back as he stood with his head just behind the front seats, ears on high alert. They parked at a narrow trailhead just before the GPS signal faded. From there, it was all forest. Dense, uneasy, still. They walked for nearly an hour, following the coordinates as they narrowed, step by step, into an area that looked no different from any other part of the Ozark Wild, until Rocky stopped cold. He sniffed once, then barked sharply. Kate followed his gaze. There, partially covered by brush and a torn blue tarp, was a small metal hatch embedded into the hillside. She brushed the leaves away. It had a lock, rusted, simple. She took a deep breath, reached into her bag, and pulled out a pry tool. With one sharp pull, the latch gave way. The hatch creaked open. A narrow staircase led down into shadow. Kate pulled a flashlight and descended slowly, Rocky at her heel. The air was damp and stale. The walls were concrete. Whoever had built this had done it carefully. At the bottom, she found a small room, a cot, a stack of canned food, books, coloring pages, batteries, and in the corner, an old cassette recorder already running. Kate clicked on the speaker. Knox's voice echoed softly through the space. "And when the world forgets, someone always remembers. That's what dogs are for, to remember the ones no one else can find." Then silence. Kate scanned the room. There were no signs of anyone currently living there, but it had been used recently. She turned toward the wall. A phrase had been written in chalk. "She's still waiting." Kate exhaled slowly, turning to Rocky. They were close. But Knox wasn't leading them to an end. He was leading them deeper. Back at the station that night, Kate sat quietly with the postcard in her hand. The Valley Pines Fun Center, the one on the front, had closed years ago. But Knox had chosen it for a reason. It wasn't random. It was nostalgia. He was leaving trails for people who would understand his code. The amusement park had been a local favorite in the early 2000s, especially among foster families who got discount tickets on weekends. Kate had been there once, so had many kids in the system. Knox had chosen his hunting ground long ago, and he'd never really left. She looked over at Rocky, curled up near the heater. "You knew before any of us, didn't you?" she whispered. He lifted his head. His eyes met hers. Not just a partner, a tracker, a survivor, and maybe the only one who could truly see the predator hiding in plain sight. The abandoned amusement park looked like something out of a dream, or a nightmare long forgotten. Valley Pines Family Fun Center had once been a staple for families across the Ozarks. In the early 2000s, kids ran laughing across sun-faded mini-golf courses, ate cotton candy under oversized umbrellas, and begged their parents for one more ride on the tiny wooden roller coaster. Now it was nothing more than a ghost town, swallowed by weeds and rust. Kate Mullins stood at the broken front gate, the sun just starting to rise behind her. Rocky stood at her side, ears perked, nose twitching. The gate creaked in the morning wind like something alive. This was where Knox had led her, his final breadcrumb. But for what? A trap? A graveyard? Or was someone still waiting? Kate moved cautiously through the overgrown pathway. She had alerted the FBI. Rhonda and a team were on standby less than 5 miles out. But Kate had made it clear. She had to go in first. Alone. With Rocky. This had started with them, and it would end the same way. She passed the rotting concession stands and the collapsed awning of the bumper car shed, her boots crunching over gravel and broken soda bottles. The place was quiet but not dead. There was a feeling in the air, a pulse. As they moved past the old arcade building, Rocky suddenly stopped cold. He turned sharply toward the faded Lost and Found shack near the back fence. Low growl, tail rigid, Kate unholstered her weapon and crept forward. The shack door was cracked open. Inside, the air smelled of dust, old candy, and mildew. Then she saw it. A child's backpack, pink, sparkled with tiny stars. A name tag hung from the zipper. Jenny. Kate's throat tightened. She stepped inside slowly. In the corner sat a young girl curled up on a sleeping bag, clutching the same plush fox from Cedar Hollow. She looked up, not afraid, just tired. "Hi," the girl said, her voice barely a whisper. Kate lowered her weapon. "Hey, sweetie, my name's Kate. You're safe now." The girl blinked. "He said the dog would come." Rocky moved forward and gently rested his head in the girl's lap. She didn't cry. She just whispered, "I knew it." Kate radioed it in. The FBI arrived within minutes. Jenny Cartwright, missing since 2019, was alive. Malnourished, pale, but alive. Rhonda pulled Kate aside as EMTs checked Jenny's vitals. "We found fresh tire tracks near the maintenance road and shoe prints, size 12, steel-toe boots. He was here." Kate nodded. "Of course he was." Rhonda looked at her, eyes filled with frustration. "How the hell does he keep slipping through?" Kate didn't answer. She didn't have to. Because this had never been about catching Knox. It had been about unraveling him, piece by piece, child by child, clue by clue. And now the thread was almost gone. Back at the station later that night, Kate sat in silence with Rocky at her feet. Jenny was at the hospital, under protection, talking to child psychologists who were trying to gently unpack her experience. What she'd said during transport still echoed in Kate's mind. "He didn't hurt me. He just talked, told me stories, taught me games, said he was waiting for the right moment." The right moment. For what? For Kate? For Rocky? For some grand finale only Knox could imagine? A knock at the station door broke her thoughts. It was a courier. Envelope, no return address. Kate opened it with gloved hands. Inside was a Polaroid photo. It showed Kate, taken from a distance, walking Rocky along the trail behind the station. The timestamp was from 2 nights earlier. Behind the photo, a handwritten note. "You've always been the one who saw it, the only one he couldn't break. But I never wanted to break you. I wanted you to finish the story." Signed, DK. Kate's breath caught. She looked at Rocky. He stared back at her with calm certainty. For weeks, the FBI combed every lead. But Knox had vanished again. No fingerprints, no sightings, nothing. Still, they had Jenny. And they had evidence, years of tapes, drawings, and journals, all proving his long, obsessive manipulation. But no closure, no arrest. 3 months later, Jenny Cartwright was officially reunited with her mother. A private ceremony was held at the community center with minimal press. Kate and Rocky stood quietly at the back of the room. When Jenny saw them, she smiled for the first time. She ran to Rocky without hesitation, throwing her arms around his neck. "He remembered," she said softly, "just like he said he would." Kate knelt beside them. "He always does, sweetheart." That night, Kate sat on her porch, Rocky curled next to her as a summer breeze moved through the trees. She didn't know if Knox was still alive, didn't know if he'd ever show himself again. But she did know this. They had beaten him at his own game, by refusing to play it the way he wanted, by showing up, by saving what could still be saved. There are some stories that never truly end. They echo across time, across people, across generations of silent heroes who never ask for recognition. And sometimes they have 4 legs and a badge number etched into an old metal tag. Canine Rocky wasn't just a hero. He was the one who found them every time. Thank you for following this powerful story of canine loyalty, redemption, and the dark truths hidden in forgotten places. Now it's your turn to weigh in. Do you believe Daryl Knox was always planning to be caught? Or was this his way of passing the torch to someone else? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And remember, heroes come in many forms. Some of them just happen to bark.